Welcome back to the Gong Show. I'm Sifu Jesse Frank. My Kung Fu family name is Moi Tin Lung. I'm the student of Moi Wo Tin, Rex Aparoch, and he's the student of Moi Yat, who of course is a student of Yip Man, and so on and so forth. So anyhow, let's get into it. Today I want to talk about this idea that's not Chi Sao, okay? So I've run into this quite a number of times where you work with someone and so many people seem to have their own definition of what Chi Sao is. Chi Sao, to the uninitiated, okay, Chi Sao is basically it's a semi-compliant partner drill, semi-non-compliant partner drill, where two people are working together, typically starting within touching distance, typically standing up, and it, one person is trying to do something to the other person. Both people are trying to do something to the other, and depending on who you talk to, that varies. Or at least what Chi Sao is varies. Okay, so we're going to take a look at what is Chi Sao, what do those words mean, the variations, and why some people might have certain ideas about what Chi Sao is that will differ from what other people think. Okay, so so first of all, let's take a look at what do the words chi and sao mean. Okay, so we'll we'll tackle the hard one first, chi. So talk about a loaded word. Um, Lots of people who do chi sao say there is no chi, right? And depending on how you define chi, they could be right. Okay, so chi, as I understand it, currently, uh, basically refers to it refers to movement, processes, and substances. Okay, so it really, one of the issues with the word chi is that it's kind of a panacea of a word. It can mean so many different things. So if you say that chi means energy, well, yeah, it does mean energy, because to have energy, you kind of have to have movement of some sort. Okay, so everything starts out, if you're at absolute zero in terms of temperature, right? There's no movement, so you have no chi, right? Um, However, as soon as you get above that, you have movements, right? And that movement is chi, and then from that you get yin yang from the differential between the two, and that's a different subject. But so anything, everything at a base level, everything is chi and or has chi. Okay, and so you could refer to it as like kinetic energy as a type of chi. Relaxed muscle tissue can be referred to as a type of chi. Water could be chi. It's in one of the issues is that if you don't have a real good understanding of what the word means, it's easy to get confused, and it's easy to make it basically almost meaningless, because it is kind of a panacea of a word, right? So if it means everything, then it doesn't mean anything. However, when you're talking about specific types of chi, okay, then we can really kind of delve deep into it. But what chi is it's not ambiguous. It's only ambiguous in the global sense, in that when I say the word chi, it can mean so many different things. Just like when I say the word energy, that can mean so many different things, okay? You have kinetic energy, heat energy, blah, 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 blah. Energy is a bit of a catch-all phrase. Not as bad as chi, okay? But, because you could have the chi that a Tai Chi practitioner refers to is going to be totally different from the chi that maybe a Chinese medicine practitioner refers to, or a Feng Shui practitioner refers to, because it can be so many different things. It's just a label that's applied to processes, movement, and substances. Okay. Again, as least as far as my current understanding goes, it's always subject to change. Okay. So, what does the word hand? What does the word sao mean, rather? So sao means hand. Okay, so energy, hand, chi, hand, right? So it the process of the hands. Okay, so so we can look at Chi Sao, and if Chi means, movement, substances, energy, whatever. Um, and again, I try to stay away from the word energy because there's so much, God, there's so much baggage caught up with that. But so let's break it down to just movement, substance, process. So Chi Sao could be thought of as the process of the hands, the hand process, okay? Or the hand movements, okay? So taken from that, it's not kind of a wooey thing at all. It's pretty straightforward, okay? We're working on the process of using the hands, okay? Um, so so that's pretty straightforward. So from that, so we've kind of defined the two words, which is awesome. So let's talk about different variations of Chi Sao. Okay, so starting out, we'll just start out with the targeting, right? Okay, so the way that I was taught Chi Sao is that to begin with, you start touching, with your hands touching, doing Luk Sao and blah 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 blah. Well, the target is primarily the chest, and it's basically this one area, so that you're going at the center line as it goes down your front. And at that first level is that you're targeting only the chest, only this area, right on the dinner plate, right? And why do we do that? Because one, it's a hard target to get at because your hands are directly in front of it, okay? Two, it's a fairly substantial, you know, structure right there. So beginners can hit it, and I probably was just hitting my microphone, so I apologize for that. But beginners can hit it and with relatively little risk of injury, okay? So it's a very hard target to hit and very little risk of injury, okay? Well, from there, we also, let's go to just the torso in general, right? So once you get past just this area right here, you can open things up to this box, right? So this entire box between, say, the two shoulders and maybe the bottom of the ribs might be in the front, might be your target, your next target. And for some people, that's where they stop, okay, as far as when they're going to call something Chi Sao, okay? Now, that's a good that's a good next stage to get to, because you expand the target range a little bit, and you can still hit, you hit a little bit lower, you get a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, a little bit more control, okay, and you can hit those areas a little bit with a little bit more control, and you've expanded your target range. And now I'm repeating myself, but so, and then from there, you can expand it to the entirety of the torso, okay? And so basically, you have more area to defend. You tend to work the center axis more than just the front center line, and that's a very important thing to work. And you can work angles, okay? The angles are a lot easier to work. Again, we're not just limited to this very small portion of the chest right here. We're working with more of the torso, and again, with working to the torso, we can work training power with again limited chance of injury. Okay, and also, since the arms are in front of the torso, it's harder to get at the targets to begin with, okay? So then when you expand it to the head, typically it's a little bit easier. Now, one really important thing about going primarily to the torso is that tends to develop the horse a lot better, okay? So you tend to develop more structure, you tend to develop more power. Now, not in all cases. I have worked with some people, very limited. I have worked with a very few amount of people who Chi Sao always with the head included, who had an exceptional horse. But my experience with that so far is that that's the exception rather than the rule. Most people that I've worked with that are kind of headhunters in that way throughout all of their Chi Sao, tend to not have a very good grounding. They tend to not have a very good horse, because as they're going up to the head, they kind of their whole body lifts up a little bit, and they lack power, because they're not training it quite as much. Whereas when we're training to the torso, we can train putting power through the other person. We can train kind of releasing energy into them and sending them away. All these different things that we may not want to do if we're going to the head. Okay, so the next version of Chi Sao is, of course, expanding the target range to the head. Okay, and that's fantastic. You absolutely have to do that. Why? Because you have actually you're using actual targets now, and you have to be able to do that. Obviously, if you're doing this for self-defense, you need to be able to target things. Also, it teaches you better control. Okay, because if we're going to the head, well, obviously, if I can't, I have to have more control, because I don't want to be knocking my partner's brain around in their skull. Okay, that leads to damage down the road, which makes me backtrack to going to the torso. Another real benefit of primarily going to the torso and only occasionally going to the head is that as we're training power into the torso, again, we're not getting repeated, the brain's not getting rattled around in the skull. So we're not giving ourselves a lot of brain damage as time goes on. And that means that we can continue to train much farther into old age without having all those cognitive issues that come up with a lot of sparring to the head, like you see in a lot of boxers and MMA people, and really anybody who trains hard and spars hard to the head with a lot of frequency. Okay, so going to the head, again, that you need to do it on occasion. You probably, in my opinion, don't want to do it too much, because there are some downsides to it, potential downsides, and it has a tendency to lead people to, again, coming up in their horse. They're training themselves more often than not to pull their punches. Okay, and so whereas going to the torso, you can give a lot more energy. You can put your body weight into the techniques, which you usually don't want to do too much if you're going to the head. Now, the issue with that is that it can lead to patty cake. All right, and you see that a lot with a lot of Wing Chun people. I hate to say it, and then they end up, they're playing patty cake. We don't want to play patty cake. That sucks. All right. So now, moving down is in the body, at least. As we're doing Chi Sao, also you vary the footwork, right, and the feet. Okay, and typically you start out just fixed step, right? You just stand there and do your techniques, and you just kind of that's about all it leads to, right? And eventually you start moving around, and then you can use your footwork, and you can use that's when you start expanding it. And when you go from just this, typically when you're just using this this area right here, you're not going to be doing quite as much in the way of footwork. That's fairly beginner level, and you're probably going to be using a fixed step. You're just going to be standing there and practicing your techniques, your hand techniques rather. And then once you start moving, that's typically when we start opening up the targets, using the whole torso and targeting the center axis. Eventually you start adding leg techniques and merging Chi Gurk, which is kind of Chi Sao for the legs, in with it. But again, that should be done sparingly, at least once you get up to until you get to a certain point. Now, that after talking about the footwork, we start to look at the ranges that Chi Sao is used at. Okay, at first, again, you start touching, and you touch hands, right? Touch arms, and you do like a couple rolls, maybe 3 rolls, and then you start doing your techniques. Okay, that is that's super basic, right? That's just level 1. And if you're at a new place and you're being nice to all the people, then you do that because etiquette calls for it, right? Um, Now, once you get past that, you kind of get to more touch and go, where it's like we meet. As soon as we meet, it's go time. Okay, now I start doing my techniques and stuff like that, um, and that's just pretty self-explanatory. That's how that goes. Um, from there, you get into long range, and so we're before we even meet, we're into our techniques, and we start chi sao as we're standing, it's on. Okay, we're not touching, we're not doing anything like that. Long range. Okay, it's pretty self-explanatory. And then eventually you can add leg techniques and whatnot, and then from there, I tend to get into more sparring and whatnot. But so those are the basic levels of Chi Sao. Now I want to take a look at why some people might um, narrow their definition of what Chi Sao is. There's also a lot of other things that Chi Sao can be that that it may not be to some, that it may be to some people but not to others. Okay, so for some people, Chi Sao being just the process or the energy of the hands, if you want to use that terminology. Um, for a lot of people, Chi Sao does not involve strikes. Okay, they're working with the energy and working with the other person's structure, the other person's horse, and stuff like that. And to them, that might be Chi Sao. Okay, and there's no strikes whatsoever. To other people, and then when you add strikes, that would be called Gor Sao. Okay, um, now and then for other people, Chi Sao is this very narrow thing where it's just this box right here, and you don't deviate to the top, you don't go to the bottom, and nothing like that. And anything outside of that is called something different, and that's fine. But they might get into what I've been. One thing that I've heard from multiple people is that that's Chi Sao, okay, and then once you deviate from that, all of a sudden you're in Mai San Jiang territory, and I disagree with that. Mai San Jiang, as I learned it from my sifu, is basically just practicing Jiang techniques, right? Mai San Jiang, right? So that the way that we would do Mai San Jiang would be, one person would give a punch or the correct type of energy for you to do a certain Jiang technique, and then you would practice it. You might take it through the levels with that to where you're eventually kind of pseudo sparring with it as well. But that to me is what Mai San Jiang is, because the word Jiang's in it, right? Amongst other things. But to some people that's what it is. Chi Sao is this narrow thing. Anything above that is Mai San Jiang, and I am speaking for him a little bit, but my understanding of what they're telling me is that then Mai San Jiang is essentially sparring, and it's kind of like anything goes type affair, and I disagree with that. I think that there's room to do Chi Sao with a lot of different levels, and a lot of different levels in between, and it doesn't have to be even kind of the guidelines that I laid out earlier. You can go in and out throughout that whole, in a single session with a single person. You can go in and out through all the various types of Chi Sao that I kind of laid out in a single session without even really communicating to your partner that's what you're doing. Now, at first, when you're first doing this stuff, you do want to do that. You do want to make sure that you're both on the same page, and you're both okay with what it is that you're about to do, especially if you're not real comfortable with the other person, or you're new to each other, or something like that. You probably want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Okay, so that's an important thing. However, once you get a certain rapport, things just kind of ebb and flow, and you go in and out from the different types and that sort of thing. And that's the way it works with me and some of the people that I know that I've worked with for decades now at this point. Is we rarely, there are some things that we will communicate beforehand. For instance, if we want to expand the target to the head, then we absolutely will communicate that to the other person. But other than that, will flow in and out of Chi Sao to what some people would call Gor Sao to a kind of a Toy Ma type affair to which Toy Ma is horse, Toy is push to horse pushing affair, um, and we don't necessarily see the need to communicate that. However, again, because for us going to the head is comparatively out of the ordinary, we will communicate that oh, you want to expand the target range, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll do that. Or if we want to do actual long range, then we'll communicate that as well. Or if we want to add the legs, what have you. And now one of the things that I recommend is I'm going to take a sip of my tea here, is when um, when you go to a new place and you're working with new people, obviously when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Okay, you don't want to go to somebody's school and have it be it's my way or the highway, obviously, right? Because that's incredibly rude. But it's a good idea to establish ground rules to begin with. So when I go someplace, since there's such a wide range of definition of what Chi Sao is, when I go to a new place, I'll say, oh, okay, do some Chi Sao. Yeah, cool, let's do that. I said, okay, well, what are the ground rules? Okay, what do you mean by Chi Sao? Okay, are we going to the head? Are we just going to the torso? Are we just staying in this area? Do you care if I add footwork? Are we just going to stand in one place? Is it okay if I add energy, or are we just going to do light little taps, right? Because while I have my own ideas of what it should be in the various levels, not everyone shares that. And just because you don't share that idea, like for instance, if I go somewhere and they play a very light to the head version of Chi Sao, and they don't move very much, well, that's totally fine. Even though at my place we may do things fairly differently, that gives me a chance, and it gives you the opportunity to hone in on those particular aspects. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that means I get to make this particular part of my skill set better, right? Because you may not perform as well, right? And that's totally fine, because you're a little bit outside of your comfort zone, right? You're playing in their court. They typically will be, or oftentimes, much of the time, if they're training diligently at least, they should be better in their avenue of Chi Sao, whatever it is that they're focused on, than you are. And that's fine and to be expected. So you just go, you learn from what it is that they're doing, and even if you may not agree with it for your own practice, you can get something out of it. And that, oh man, they while I may not agree, they may not have a good horse or something like that. In this instance, because they're just doing everything lightly, and maybe they're a patty cake group or something like that. But they probably will have something that you can still take away from it. So you just make sure play their game, and see where they're strong, see what you can take from that, and just have a good time, because we're never all going to agree on everything. We sometimes we can hardly agree on anything, and the funny thing is, the closer you get to agreement, the more the small differences become magnified, right? And so that's just a kind of a fact of life with just about anything. So anyhow, that's I encourage you to, if just instead of looking at something and saying to yourself, well, that's not Chi Sao. Well, what you're doing is not Chi Sao, right? Oh, actually, on that note, one of the things that sometimes happens, which is, and I've talked to a number of people to whom this has happened too, is sometimes people will use "that's not chi sao" as an excuse for their poor performance. Okay, and that's a cop out. Don't ever do that. Okay, so it's totally fine to, but again, that's why that's why it's so important to lay out the ground rules beforehand, say, so that you know that you're both working within the same framework. Okay, and if one goes outside the bounds of the framework that you've established, then you can actually say, okay, look, that's not what we're doing. Okay, you may not say that's not chi sao, but okay, that's not what we agreed to do. um, but one of the issues that I think holds people back is um, they'll do chi sao, and whatever their version is, and if they get hit, or if their perception is they're not doing very well, um, instead of looking inside themselves and really doing some, self-criticism and self-analysis, and saying, okay, well, where did this go off the rails, and what am I doing that maybe what am I doing wrong that maybe I could be doing better? What am I missing? Okay, what can I add? What are they doing to do this? Oftentimes, if what the other person's doing, they just make the excuse, well, that's not chi sao, so I don't even have to worry about it. And I think that's an enormous mistake, and something to be avoided, not at all costs, but definitely something to be avoided. So make sure that you communicate effectively with the other person that you're working with, especially if you've not worked together before, so that you're both on the same page. And that way, if the other person goes out of the bounds of what it is that you're doing, you can say, hey, okay, that was cool, but let's can we bring it back to, I don't want to go there right now. Can we get back to what we had agreed to do? Because the flip side of the argument that I just made is that sometimes if someone is not doing well, they will go outside of the bounds of whatever drill it is that you're using in order so that they can bolster their own self-confidence, because they need to feel like they've won. And again, that should be avoided too. If you're working within a specific framework, you need to continue to work within that specific framework so that you can progress in the skills that that framework is intended to hone. So that's very important. Anyhow, so I guess in closing, really what I want to communicate to you all is communication is the best thing. If you're working with someone new, make sure that you're both on the same page as to what it is you're going to be doing. That way there's no surprises, there's a little bit less in the way of hard feelings and that sort of thing. And hopefully that will give everyone a better and more productive experience, okay? Because if we're doing things right, we're here to learn, and we're here to get better, and we're here to make everyone else better, okay? That's the important thing, okay? So thanks again for watching, listening, however you're... So thanks again for listening or watching or however you're consuming this. And my name is Sifu Jesse. Just remember, my little tagline here today is going to be, to know others, first know yourself.